Welcome back to another episode of Mr. Bowman Makes, and thanks for stopping by. In this episode, we are going to be looking at the differences between the visual scripting program Scratch and the text-based programming platform of Pico-8. Now, you might be somebody who has been using Scratch for the last few years and you've become quite good at it, and you're trying to figure out which direction to take in terms of going further with your coding understanding. You might have looked at JavaScript, you might have looked at Python, you might have looked at C#, you might be looking at Unity or Unreal Engine 4, and you're just not sure where to go or what to choose next. Well, in this episode, we are going to go through the fundamentals of Pico-8. Pico-8 is a fantastic transition program that will allow you to take the skills that you've learnt in Scratch and take them simply into something that is a text-based coding language. And Pico-8 uses the base coding language called Lua, which is a very beginner-friendly way to ease into the text-based languages. And then from here, you can understand different things about text-based languages and take that into, say, JavaScript or Python or C# and go on to those more complex coding languages. So we're going to dive in right now and have a look at how Scratch uses variables. And then we're going to have a look at how Pico-8 does exactly the same thing. And we're going to compare the two so you can see exactly how you would do one thing in Scratch and then how you would do exactly the same thing in Pico-8. So let's head on over to Scratch. Okay, here's the quick program in Scratch to demonstrate how you would create variables in Scratch versus Pico-8. So we've got our variables here and we've got a join command, and we're just going to have a look at how those work in action. So my name is Mr. Bowman, I'm from Australia, and my favorite food is sushi. There you go. Okay, so we are going to break this down now by deleting everything and then going back and having a look at how we make variables in Scratch. So let's actually get rid of these so that we can completely start again. And I'm just going to leave this little flag here. Okay, so in Scratch, to make a variable, you simply click the Make a Variable button, and I can type in name. And we also have the option here for all sprites or this sprite only. We're going to see this same thing in action in Pico-8 in a slightly different way. So I'm going to have this for all sprites. I'm going to go, okay. I'm then going to make another variable and I'm going to call this location. Okay. And food. And okay. So I've made my three variables here. And we need to set those variables now. So I've got to set food and set, actually let's keep them in order. Let's go name, and I'll duplicate this and go location, and then duplicate that, and then finally food. I really like food. That's why I keep wanting to put it in. Okay, so name is Mr. Bowman, and location is Australia, and food is sushi. Now sushi I should probably have as a lowercase because it's going to be in the middle of a sentence. So there we go. Okay, now that I've got that, I can then get my cat to actually say those variables. So if I just go up to looks, and then I say, get my say thing, and then I'm going to come back to my variables, I can just make the cat say whatever the name variable is by dragging in the name variable here, and if I click the flag, it will say Mr. Bowman. Okay, so that's fine, and I can do exactly the same thing to all the other ones. Duplicate, and I'll take that out and drag in location and food, and there we go. So I can say Mr. Bowman, Australia, and sushi. Right, but I want to put these things into sentences, and that's where I'm going to need my join command. So if we come down to join, I can then take my name and put that there, and then I'm going to write in here, my name is, and I've got to be careful here, I need to put a space because otherwise Scratch will simply just put name straight after my name is. So we'll have a look at that. There we go, my name is Mr. Bowman. Okay, so let's put a space in there. Space, and now we've got that sentence. I need to do exactly the same thing to the other ones, so I'm going to go click that. I live in space. Well, I don't live in space, I live in Australia. And location, and then I'm going to do, I like to eat sushi. All right, and there we go. So let's play this. And I like to eat sushi. I'm probably gonna have sushi for lunch. All right, there we go. So that is how we use variables in Scratch. Let's jump over and do exactly the same thing in Pico-8. All right, let's have a look at how we achieve our previous Scratch code in Pico-8. I've got our previous code over here so we can keep comparing back to it as we're working through. Now, the first thing we need to do in Pico-8 is press Escape to go into the editor. And in the editor, we are first introduced to the actual coding space, and I can add a comment here just by putting 2 dashes in and then putting something like coding and then enter. This comment system just helps us to keep track of what we're trying to do at a particular point, and it just means that we can keep things organized and not get confused about what we're trying to do or what we did if we come back to this months later. Okay, now the first thing we're going to do is start with our variables, and I'm going to call them exactly the same name. So our first variable, as we did in Scratch, is called name, and if we press equals, we've just almost created our variable. Let's get rid of the mouse. In order to put in Mr. Bowman, I need to do something slightly different to Scratch, and that's to put in the double quotation marks. I need to put in 2 of those, so it's a double quotation, and in between those, I'm just going to press back 1. I'm going to put in Mr. Whoops, I pressed Shift. Mr. Bowman. And now what I've done is exactly the same thing here as here. I've created a variable, and this variable's value is Mr. Bowman. So the variable is called name, and the value of the variable is Mr. Bowman. Now, anytime you want to write something as text in Pico-8, so something like Mr. Bowman, you have to put it in between these 2 quotation marks. So you could write anything in there, and as long as it's between 2 quotation marks, it will end up coming out on the screen if that's what you want. All right, let's go on to our other 2. I'm just going to call this location, enter, and double quotes, and whoops, I did the shift again, Australia. If you press shift when you're doing anything in Pico-8, it will actually give you a different symbol, not a capital letter. And I'm going to make food equal to sushi. Done. All right. Well, we have our variables, but how do we actually make them appear on screen? Because if I run this with Control R, nothing happens. So I press Escape again to go back. Well, here's where we do something slightly different again in Pico-8 to Scratch. We actually need to tell it, like Scratch says say, we actually need to do this in Pico-8. And Pico-8 has a very similar code, and that is called print. Now notice when I type print, it turns green. That means that it is a particular command in Pico-8 that will actually execute a piece of code for us. And it's just like a code block in Scratch. Whenever we see a different colored command there, whether it's green, it might be red, what we're actually doing is we're actually executing a code block, and it's saying this is a very specific word in Pico-8 that actually means something. So in order to print our variables to the screen, we need to put them inside of the print command, and we do that by putting it in brackets. So anything within those brackets there is going to be printed on the screen. So let's just type name, and then I'm going to run this with Control R again. And there we go, Mr. Bowman. So we've printed this on screen. If I go Escape, I can then do exactly the same thing again. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to copy this down 3 times so it's easier to do. To do that, I just select by dragging across the code, and you can see that it's being selected with the yellow. I press Command or Control C, depending on whether you're on a Mac or a PC. I then press Enter, and then Command or Control V, and then Command or Control V again. And now I've got the 3 print statements going down the page. then what I can do is select name and just put location in there, and then select, I need to make sure that I select that again and go food, and then I'm going to go Control R, and there we go. Mr. Bowman, Australia, and sushi are printed on our screen. But you can see that we've also got the previous part that we've done, which was from the previously run code. And if we keep doing this, we're going to fill our screen up really quickly with previous code. So there's another command in Pico-8 that can let us get rid of that, and I'll show you that now. Whoops, I just ran it again. Let's go escape. Okay, now the first thing you can do when you want to actually clear the screen is typing CLS and then those brackets. CLS stands for clear screen. And when we want to clear the screen of all the things that have come before it, we can just type CLS brackets, and anything that is on the screen when CLS is run will immediately disappear. So I'll show you by putting this in different locations. First of all, we'll run this, and you can see that all the other text is gone. If I go back again, and I actually, let's say we come down here and I just say CLS, and we run this again, now it only prints sushi. So let's go escape, because I've cleared the screen. It might for a fraction of a second show this on screen, but then immediately it will get rid of that and it will clear the screen and it will only show sushi. There's a tongue twister for you. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to add in our my name is, and you'll see how this is different in Lua or Pico-8. Lua is the coding language of Pico-8. You'll see how we do this differently in Pico-8 versus Scratch. So what I'm going to do is before the name, I'm going to again put in my double quotes to make sure that we actually get the text in there. And I'm going to write whoops, I did that shift thing again. My name is, and again, notice that I have to press the space in order to make sure that that space is actually printed. Now, here, there are different ways of doing this in other languages, but in Lua, or Pico-8, all we need to do is type ... means join in Pico-8. And so what I'm going to do is add in these other parts to the sentence, and I'm going to do the ... and you'll see how that actually comes out. So let's go ... There we go. And then I can come back here and I'm going to say I live, I live in, and then I'm going to go ... here again and put in the double quotes. And then I say, I like to eat space. Okay, let's have a look what that does in Pico-8. Control R. There we go. My name is Mr. Bowman. I live in Australia. I like to eat sushi. So we've just done exactly the same thing here as here. We've created the print statement, which puts text on screen, and there's many other options that we can actually do to the print statement, but I'm not going to go through those in this video. We have done the variables up here and cleared the screen and printed out our thing. And that is how you do a similar thing with variables in Scratch and Pico-8. So hopefully that was helpful in getting you started with how you would introduce variables into your coding in Pico-8. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video.